The sun didn't rise that morning, it bled. Over the cracked earth of the Arizona desert, the sky split open in bruised reds and burning golds, casting long shadows that clung to the jagged rocks like ghosts. A woman lay still at the base of a mesquite tree, her face half covered by dust, one eye swollen shut, the other fixed on nothing. Her dress, once blue, was now a ruin of ripped seams and blood-stained cotton. The rope binding her wrists had carved angry ridges into her skin, and her lips were dry cracks on a pale canvas. Clara Belle Thatcher would have been beautiful once. Her mother had always said her smile could stop horses mid-stride. But out here there was no one left to smile for, and nothing to smile about. She blinked slowly once as hooves faded into the distance. Her family had ridden off at dawn, the same family that taught her how to pray and fire a rifle. The same family that now left her to die in the scrub and silence. Her brother Jed had spit at her feet before he left. "You're nothing but shame in a dress," he'd said. "Best if the desert takes what's left." She'd begged, not with words, her tongue too swollen for that, but with her eyes. He'd looked away. Now she lay alone, her cheek pressed to the warm dirt, breath shallow and fluttering like moth wings. The wind moved through the grass in whispers, and a pair of vultures circled overhead. She wondered vaguely if they recognized her yet. But Clara Belle wasn't dead. Not yet. A thorn bush scraped her as she rolled, every inch of movement a scream in her muscles. She reached a crooked tree root and used it to sit up, chest heaving. The rope around her wrists was frayed from the struggle, so she gnawed at it until blood filled her mouth. Copper and grit. When it finally snapped, she fell backward and lay there for a long while, staring at the sky. The clouds looked like smoke trails. For a moment she imagined it was a funeral pyre, hers. Then she stood. It wasn't graceful. Her legs trembled like a newborn foal's, and her breath came in hot rasps. But Clara Belle was nothing if not stubborn. She wiped the blood from her mouth, staggered toward the sun, and began to walk. The desert did not welcome her. Cactus needles tore at her legs. Sharp stones split her feet through her thin-soled boots. A rattlesnake coiled under a rock and hissed as she passed, but she didn't flinch. The real venom had already been delivered, by her father, her brothers, the ones who chose God's wrath over mercy and left her to the buzzards. A mile in, her knees buckled. She fell hard, dust choking her lungs, and for a while she couldn't move. Then, over the ridge, something shimmered in the heat, an outline. A building maybe. Or just a cruel trick of the sun. She crawled. By the time she reached it, her arms gave out. It was no mirage. A broken chapel stood, barely upright, its roof caved in and door swinging crooked. The altar inside was black with soot, the pews cracked like old bones. She dragged herself inside and lay under the shadow of the ruined cross. Tears came then. Not loud. Just one or two, salty and unexpected, sliding down her dirt-streaked cheeks. She didn't cry for herself. She cried for the girl who once braided her hair with wildflowers and dreamed of dancing barefoot at her wedding. Somewhere between one breath and the next she lost consciousness. When she woke again it was to the sound of boots. She didn't open her eyes at first, afraid that if she saw a man, it would mean the end had come. A rough hand touched her shoulder, warm and calloused. She tensed, ready to claw and bite, but the hand withdrew quickly, almost respectful. "Well damn," a voice muttered. Gravel-thick, dry as August. "You still breathin'?" She opened one eye. He stood like a shadow with a rifle slung across his back and a face half lost to some old fire. A long scar cut through his left eyebrow and disappeared beneath a hat that had seen better days. He wasn't handsome in any soft way. He looked carved from wood and battle smoke. "Who?" She tried to speak, but it came out in a wheeze. "Easy," he said. He took off his coat, wrapped it around her shoulders, and poured water from a canteen into a dented tin cup. "Drink." She did. The water tasted like rust and salvation. Her throat burned, then thanked her. "Name's Bo Cutter," the man said. "Found you half dead and whole busted." She nodded weakly, not ready to give her name yet. Names had power. Hers had only brought her pain lately. "You got folks nearby?" She shook her head. "Well then." He stood and looked around the chapel like it might give him answers. "Guess that makes you my problem." She passed out again. When next she opened her eyes, she was moving. The sky above her was dark, full of stars. The ground bounced beneath her. A wagon. He put her in the back, covered her with a thin blanket. Horses trotted steadily in front, and Bo sat on the driver's bench, humming something that might have been a hymn, or a threat. They reached a shack by morning. Not a home, not really. Just four walls, a door that stuck, and a roof that rattled in the wind. Inside, a cot waited, and next to it, a wash basin and a pot of beans that smelled suspiciously like roadkill. She ate anyway. Bo didn't ask many questions, but he watched her like a man watching a snake, curious if it bites. She tried not to meet his eyes, afraid of what he might see in hers. "I don't usually bring strays home," he said one night as she sat on the cot, legs drawn up, wearing an old shirt he'd tossed her. "Hell, I don't usually have a home." "Why did you?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away, just stared into the fire. Then, "You looked like someone who wasn't finished yet." She didn't know what to say to that. He cooked. Badly. He repaired her boots with twine and spit. He gave her space. And he never touched her, not even by accident. Still, something about him made her uneasy. Not fear, just uncertainty. Like standing near a wild horse, unsure if it would bolt or charge. One morning, after the worst of the fever had passed, she asked him why his face looked like it had been through hell. "'Cause it has," he said. No elaboration. She asked where he was from. "Farther than I care to remember." And then he grinned for the first time, slow and crooked. "But close enough to know you don't end up half dead in a church unless someone meant it." She stiffened. "I ain't a skin what you did," he said. "Ain't none of my business unless it becomes my problem." "It won't." He nodded, satisfied. "Good." But something passed between them then. A shared understanding. Whatever hell she came from, it mirrored his. That night, when he sat by the fire and cleaned his rifle, she finally said, "Clara." He looked up. "My name. It's Clara Bell." He nodded. "Suited you back when?" "Back when?" She smiled a little at that. He tossed her an apple and stood. "Get some rest. Town's holdin' an auction tomorrow." "What kind of auction?" "Widow's auction," he said. "Men buy wives. Or pretend to." Her stomach turned. "That's disgusting." He shrugged. "So's the world. But it's the quickest way to stake land if you need a partner on paper. Government loves a happy couple." She eyed him. "You in the market for a wife?" Bo gave her a long look, the firelight dancing over his scarred face. "No," he said. "But I might need a partner." The words hung in the air between them. She should have refused. Should have run. But there was nowhere left to go, and the idea of pretending, even just pretending, that someone might stand beside her instead of leave her behind, was a comfort she didn't expect. "What would I get out of it?" she asked. He smiled again, that rough canyon of a grin. "Protection. A place to sleep. My share of the land if we don't kill each other first." "And if I say no?" "You're free to go," he said simply. "Ain't no chains here. Just choices." Clara stared into the fire a long time before speaking again. "Then tomorrow," she said, "I'll be your wife." Bo nodded once and went back to cleaning his rifle. And in the silence that followed, something shifted, not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. Like a spark in dry grass, waiting for wind. The morning sun came hard and yellow through the warped windowpane, laying long stripes across the floor like prison bars. Clara Bell sat at the edge of the narrow bed, barefoot, her hair a tangle of sleep and dust. Bo had left a basin of water and a folded dress on the chair beside her. Not a word spoken. Not a note. Just the quiet expectation that she'd rise and make herself presentable for the spectacle ahead. The dress was pale green, worn thin at the elbows but clean. It smelled faintly of sagebrush and campfire. Clara ran her fingers over the frayed collar and sighed. She hated how easily she was starting to fall into rhythm, how her hands remembered how to braid her hair, how her spine straightened when she slipped on a belt, how her reflection in the cracked mirror started to resemble someone she used to know. Downstairs, Bo waited with coffee and 2 slices of dry toast. He didn't look at her when she entered the room. He just nodded once like she'd passed some silent test. "You clean up like trouble looking for an invitation," he muttered. She smirked. "That's a hell of a compliment." Didn't mean it as one. They ate in silence, broken only by the creak of the windmill and the occasional cough from Bo, which he tried to smother in his sleeve. When he finally spoke again, his tone was level but edged. "Here's how this goes. We ride into town hand in hand, no drama. You answer to Mrs. Cutter if anyone asks. You smile like you mean it, keep your eyes sharp, and don't go running off." "And after?" she asked. "After we get the land deed signed, play house until nobody cares anymore, and part ways like civilized folks." Clara tilted her head. "That your idea of a honeymoon?" He raised an eyebrow. "Ain't no moon sweet enough to follow me, darlin'. Let's ride." The road into Dry River twisted between bluffs and sandstone arches, the kind of trail that forced silence and reminded you just how far from mercy you really were. Clara rode behind Bo on the horse he called Moses, her arms looped loosely around his waist. She could feel the tension in his back, muscles coiled tight, every movement economical. Dry River looked worse than she remembered. The saloon sagged like it had arthritis. The blacksmith shop was boarded up. A preacher's bell tower stood scorched from lightning, its cross blackened and bent. Still, people gathered in the square, murmuring with the slow, dull hunger of a town used to spectacle. At the far end of the square, a makeshift platform had been built from old wagon boards. 5 women stood upon it, each one pale and stiff, dressed in their Sunday best like they were heading to a hanging. Maybe they were. A crowd of men circled below, puffing cigars, adjusting belts, shouting numbers. It wasn't the kind of place Clara ever thought she'd be again. But here she was, pretending to belong to a man with a gun on his hip and no patience in his eyes. Bo swung down and offered her his hand. She took it. The crowd parted for them, a hush falling as if someone had sucked the air clean out of the town. Bo Cutter was not a man people ignored. His scar alone could silence a room. One of the officials, a rotund, red-faced clerk with ink-stained fingers, raised a clipboard. Names? Bo didn't blink. Bo Cutter. This here's my wife. The word clanged in Clara's ears like an iron bell. Wife. She stood taller, forced a soft smile onto her lips. A few men stared longer than she liked. One stepped forward, tall, lanky, with a gold tooth and a lazy drawl. Don't recall you being married, Cutter? This some last-minute arrangement? Bo's hand settled on the butt of his revolver with a grace that wasn't quite threatening, but wasn't not. You callin' me a liar, Denton? Denton grinned, all gums and glitter. Just callin' it curious. Clara leaned in, slipping her hand through Bo's arm. Ain't much curious about a man lookin' to settle down and a woman tired of runnin'. Some of us just do it quiet. The crowd chuckled. Denton looked her over again, slower this time, but stepped back. Papers were signed in a crooked little building with 2 chairs and a cracked desk. The clerk squinted at the forms, scratched his beard, and tapped the paper with his pen. You'll need to kiss for the seal. Bo looked at Clara. She didn't flinch. She stepped forward and kissed him, soft and deliberate. Not romantic. Not chaste. Just real enough to sell the lie. His lips were dry, beard scratchy, but the way his hand hovered just behind her back without touching her, it said more than the kiss ever could. The clerk nodded. Land grant's yours. 100 acres west of Widow's Gulch. Be sure to put up a fence. Coyotes get nosy. Outside, the sun had slipped low, painting the dirt streets in rust and honey. Bo led her toward the horses without a word. But Clara's steps slowed as they passed the saloon. Laughter spilled from inside, loud and ugly. A voice called out behind them. Hey, Cutter. They turned. Denton again, flanked by 2 men, both broad, both armed. He had a rolled paper in his hand and a glint in his eye that didn't match the easy smile on his face. Y'all forgot your wedding gift. He tossed the paper. Bo caught it one-handed, unrolled it. His jaw tightened. Clara stepped closer, peering over his shoulder. It was a wanted poster. Her wanted poster. Clara Bell Thatcher. Fugitive. Theft, conspiracy. Last seen near Tuscaloosa. Reward, $200, dead or alive. Her blood went cold. Her mouth tasted like dirt again. Denton's grin widened. Didn't figure you for a woman thief, Cutter. Thought you had better taste. Bo said nothing. He simply folded the poster, pocketed it, and looked at Clara with an unreadable expression. Denton leaned forward. You planning on splitting that reward with your missus, or should I take her off your hands and collect? Bo didn't move. For a heartbeat, Clara thought he might walk away. Let them take her. She wouldn't have blamed him. Then the gun was out. Quick, clean, no warning. Not aimed, just shown. Bo's voice was low, calm. You speak again, Denton, and I'll collect my own reward, one that don't involve the sheriff. Silence. Denton held up both hands, mock surrender. Easy now, preacher. Bo holstered the gun and walked away without looking back. Clara followed, silent, heartbeat hammering like a stampede. When they reached the horses, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. You gonna tell me you didn't know? I figured, he said. Didn't matter. But it does now. He looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them again. Not affection. Not forgiveness. Just understanding. Only if you make it matter, he said. They rode in silence for a while, the town shrinking behind them into dust and memory. The landscape stretched out ahead, endless and unpromising. At sunset they stopped by a creek. Clara knelt to wash her face, watching the water turn gold around her fingers. Bo leaned against a tree, arms crossed, eyes distant. She sat beside him, back against the bark. The quiet between them was full but not heavy. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once. "Don't mention it." Pause. "I mean it." "I know." The moon rose slow, heavy with promise. She looked at him through the silver light and asked softly, "You really gonna build that ranch?" Bo shrugged. "Might. Think there's room for a garden?" He looked at her then. Not through her. Not past her. At her. "I think," he said, "we've got room for more than that." She smiled, this time not forced. And somewhere behind the stars and the scars, something like hope took root. The mornings came earlier now. Clara woke before the rooster cried, tangled in coarse sheets and the scent of wood smoke. The cabin Bo had built, simple walls, tin roof, a porch barely wide enough for two, had started to feel less like a hiding place and more like something solid. Not home. Not yet. But maybe on the way to it. She stepped outside barefoot, the planks creaking beneath her weight. The horizon bled pink and amber, the kind of light that made the desert feel honest. Bo was already by the corral, feeding the horses. He didn't wave. Didn't speak. Just nodded once when he caught her eye. That was his way, steady as a boulder but with a current running deep underneath. Clara tied her hair back with a leather string and set to feeding the chickens. Every movement was deliberate now, every small task a piece of a life she hadn't thought she'd deserve. Days passed in repetition, fixing fence posts, hauling water, repairing the barn's lopsided roof. At night they sat by the fire. Sometimes he told stories from the war. Sometimes she told lies that sounded close enough to truth. But mostly they just existed. Together. Still, the silence between them had teeth. That morning, Bo came to the table with a newspaper, freshly delivered by a wiry boy from town who charged double for the dusty ride. He dropped it beside her plate of cornbread and beans. One name was circled in red pencil. Deputy Harlan Weathers. New man in Dry River, Bo said. Brought in from Austin to clean up some outlaw business. Ex-Pinkerton. Clara's eyes narrowed. "You think he's here for me?" "I think men like that don't let go of bones once they're chewing." She felt the weight of her name again, Clara Belle Thatcher. A name that lived on wanted posters, in bounty lists, whispered at saloons. She had run so far for so long she forgot what standing still felt like. Now that she'd found it, someone was trying to tear it from her. "I could leave," she said quietly. "Wouldn't be the first time I disappeared." Bo sat back, arms folded, the scar along his jaw catching the light. "And do what? Start over again with a new face, a new name? Keep running until you run out of road? I ain't worth a noose around your neck." He leaned forward. "That ain't your call." Clara blinked, caught off guard. Not by his words but by the sharpness behind them. The man who'd spoken little now guarded her like she'd been born under his roof. "Then what do? We survive. And if Weathers comes sniffing around, we give him nothing. Not lies. Not truth. Just air." But air had a way of carrying scent. And Deputy Weathers wasn't the sort of man easily fooled. The next day, the deputy rode up to the homestead on a chestnut mare with polished tack and an attitude sharp enough to shave with. Clara watched him from the window, her pulse a war drum in her ears. Bo opened the door before she could speak. "Cutter," Weathers greeted. "Heard you settled with a bride. Thought I'd come congratulate you." "Thought you were here for outlaws," Bo replied, not inviting him in. Weathers smiled, too many teeth, too little warmth. Sometimes the worst snakes sleep inside warm homes. Clara stepped out onto the porch, her voice calm. "Something we can help you with, deputy?" He turned, eyes narrowing slightly. "And you must be the blushing bride. Not much blush in this heat." He chuckled, but it was hollow. "Name?" "Mrs. Cutter." "No first name?" She smiled sweetly. A lady never gives away all her secrets on the first visit. Weathers' eyes lingered a beat too long. He wasn't fooled. Clara could see it in the way his fingers tapped the brim of his hat. He had the scent. And he'd be back. That night the fire burned low. Clara sat with her knees pulled to her chest, watching embers dance like memories she couldn't shake. Bo stood near the doorway, arms crossed. "You handled him well," he said. She didn't answer. After a moment he asked, "You still got that derringer?" Clara looked up. "Why?" "Because snakes don't always rattle before they strike." She nodded. The gun was hidden beneath the floorboards, wrapped in cloth. It had only 2 bullets. She'd never had to use it. Yet. Days passed, tense and tight. Weathers returned twice more. Once, just to ask questions about where they came from. Another time, under the pretense of inspecting cattle brands. Each time, Clara answered in careful tones, giving nothing, showing less. But she could feel it building, the sense that something was coming. Something bad. Then one afternoon, Bo didn't return. He'd gone to town for supplies. Should have been back by sunset. Clara waited, pacing the porch, every creak of the boards a reminder that something wasn't right. When darkness fell and still no sign, she saddled Moses and rode hard toward Dry River, heart pounding against ribs like fists against a jail cell. She found him in the alley behind the saloon, bloodied but standing. 2 men lay unconscious at his feet. One groaned. The other didn't move. Weathers stood nearby, arms folded, watching like a hawk circling a dying rabbit. Clara dismounted, running to Bo. What happened? Bo spit blood onto the dirt. Weathers thought to test how bad I wanted to keep you safe. The deputy stepped forward, calm as ever. Seems your husband enjoys brawling. Clara's voice was cold. You provoked this? I offered a trade. Information for peace. He declined. Clara looked to Bo. His silence was answer enough. He'd been willing to take fists rather than give her up. Weathers tipped his hat. This ain't over. You think you're building a future here? I've seen too many ghosts buried in this dirt. They don't stay down. He walked away without another word. Clara helped Bo to the horse, her hands steady though her insides quaked. Blood soaked through his shirt, a bruise forming around his eye. Still he managed to mount, jaw tight with pain. You're a damn fool, she whispered. I've been called worse. They rode home in silence, the moon chasing their shadows across the desert. Clara held his hand the whole way. At the cabin she cleaned his wounds. He winced only once when she pressed cloth to the gash on his ribs. You didn't have to fight. I did. Why? He met her gaze. For once, nothing guarded it. Because I ain't letting anyone rewrite what we've started. Clara's throat tightened. She pressed her palm to his cheek, rough with stubble, warm with defiance. For the first time she felt it, the undeniable truth of it all. They weren't just playing at a life. They were building one. In pain. In danger. In stubborn defiance of everything that had tried to bury them. That night as Bo slept, Clara sat awake by the window, Derringer on the sill. The desert wind whispered secrets she already knew. Weathers would come again. And next time it wouldn't be fists. It would be fire. Or guns. Or law in a form that couldn't be argued with. But Clara Belle Thatcher was done running. She would fight. Not because she had to. Because now, she had something to fight for. The storm rolled in without warning, desert thunder rumbling like cannon fire across the basin, lightning splitting the sky into jagged pieces. Rain came hard and fast, soaking the earth, turning dust to mud and drowning the quiet of the homestead beneath a roar of wind and water. Clara stood at the porch rail, eyes fixed on the horizon. She could feel it in her bones. Something was coming. No, someone. Bo emerged from the barn, shirt plastered to his skin, rifle slung over his shoulder. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The air between them was charged, electric with a tension they both understood too well. They'll use the storm, Clara said, voice steady. He nodded. It's cover. And they think we'll be caught off guard. Are we? Bo's eyes, shadowed beneath the brim of his hat, met hers. No. We're ready. Inside, the cabin was dark save for the flicker of oil lamps and the fire dancing low in the hearth. Clara placed the Derringer beneath her bodice, her fingers grazing the cool metal like a prayer. Bo checked the rifle, laid a shotgun across the table, then paused. His gaze lingered on her longer than usual. You sure about this? I'm not the girl who ran, she said. Not anymore. He moved closer, the scent of rain and gun oil heavy around him. You're more than I ever expected, Clara. She touched his cheek, thumb tracing the edge of his scar. And you're more than you'll admit. The knock came like a gunshot. 3 raps. Measured. Intentional. Clara's breath caught. Bo stepped to the door, rifle raised. She took position near the window, heart pounding, the Derringer hidden but ready. Outside, thunder cracked again. Evening, came the voice, muffled by wood and rain. Deputy Weathers here. I'm here for a conversation, not a confrontation. Bo didn't move. You brought company? Just one man. For safety. Yours and mine. Clara glanced through the curtain. Weathers stood under the awning, drenched but calm. A second man flanked him, short, stocky, face obscured by a slicker hood. Armed. We talk on our land, Bo called. Weapons down. There was a pause. Then the sound of metal hitting mud. Bo opened the door a crack. Step slow. They did. Weathers with a confident gait, boots squelching in the mud. His companion silent, eyes flickering with calculation. They stopped just short of the porch. "You know why I'm here?" Weathers said. "You've had your time. You've built your story. But it's fiction. And I'm here to correct it." Bo didn't lower his rifle. "Funny. All I see is a man overreaching his badge." Weathers smiled. "She's wanted. You know it. I know it. Hell, she knows it. There's no hiding anymore. Not with that reward hanging over her name like a noose." Clara stepped forward, then out into the open, rain matting her hair to her skin. "And what do you want, deputy? Justice? Or gold?" Weathers shrugged. "Both. Maybe. But more than that, I want a clean town. And you, Miss Thatcher, are a loose thread. She's not yours to unravel," Bo growled. The second man shifted, hand twitching near his coat. Clara's eyes narrowed. "I know you." The man hesitated. She stepped closer, staring hard through the rain. "You rode with Johnny Pike. You were at the Tuscaloosa standoff." He didn't answer. "You left us behind when the law came. You set us up." Still silence. Clara turned to Weathers. "You brought a traitor to serve justice?" "I brought a witness," Weathers said smoothly. "Someone who saw you steal from the federal payroll. Saw you flee. And I saw him shoot a marshal in the back." The man lunged. Everything happened at once. Clara dove sideways. Bo fired. The rifle cracked like thunder and the traitor dropped, gun still half raised. Weathers reached for his weapon, but Clara was faster. The Derringer barked, a flash of light in the dark. The bullet caught Weathers in the thigh. He collapsed with a cry, mud splashing around him. Clara stood over him, breathing hard, the smoke curling from her pistol. "You're right," she said. "I did run. I made mistakes. But I didn't kill anyone. I didn't betray anyone. And I'm done being hunted." Weathers stared up at her, face pale, blood soaking through his trousers. "You'll be found. Others will come." Clara crouched beside him. "Then let them. But you're done." Bo approached, shotgun in hand, eyes never leaving the deputy. "You ride back to Dry River. You tell them we're gone. Tell them the trail runs cold." "And if I don't?" Bo leaned in, voice like gravel. "Then next time we aim higher." They gave him a horse, left his companion in the dirt, and watched until the figure vanished into the storm. Clara stood in the doorway long after, watching the rain wash away the blood. Inside, the fire hissed as damp logs crackled. Bo sat, untying the cloth from his hand, grazed by a bullet, nothing deep. Clara wrapped it in silence, her fingers steady, her thoughts louder than the storm. "I'm not sure what happens now," she said. Bo met her eyes. "We disappear. I'm tired of disappearing." He nodded. "Then we build. Somewhere far. Someplace honest." She smiled faintly. "You ever think we'd end up here?" "Never. But I ain't mad we did." Clara leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. The storm outside began to soften, the wind dying down, the world exhaling. In the silence that followed, she felt something settle, something final yet open. A chapter closed. A new one waiting. They would ride come dawn, leave the cabin and the ghosts behind. Maybe to Montana. Maybe to Mexico. Maybe just further west, where the land stretched so wide it could swallow the past whole. But wherever they went, they'd go together. No longer a fugitive. No longer alone. Clara Belle Thatcher had been left for dead by the people who should have loved her. But here, on the edge of nowhere, a scarred cowboy had spoken her name like a promise. And now, finally, she was free. Not because she'd outrun her past, but because she'd faced it, bullet, blood and all, and won.